What's up? Let's try the Hershey. Let's try the Hershey with a truth bomb or two along the way. QAnon's not posting much in the way of sense anymore. Our good friend, the Love Dumpling, the Praying Medic, hasn't been really vocal since his disastrous rollout of Operation Destroy Sebastian Gorka. That didn't work out well. Then somebody sent me a clip. Actually, no, I did. I saw it on Obi's Periscope. A clip of a frantic, disoriented, and desperate Ann Vandersteel trying to rewrite history of the MAGA Coalition, which is just hilarious. Hilarious. To you guys, I mean, it's pretty much boring, old history. You guys mostly know the truth, but other people are just finding out about this stuff. So the MAGA Coalition has been, according to Google and Twitter, we are all of a sudden we are the most researched and talked about political action committee in the country right now. So most of that was unintentional by our enemies, who sought to destroy us and have only emboldened us on our mission to expose the truth against grifters on the left and on the right, which apparently that's more populist on the right due to the popularity of something derisively called MAGA commerce, which is a bastardization of Trump's ability to make anything marketable, and that's what they've chosen to do in his name. So you can try to kill the MAGA Coalition, Ann, but let's remember who invented the MAGA Coalition. You did. So Ann Vandersteel decides to tell people, yeah, my husband was involved for 8 days, and he saw things occurring. I don't know what the heck she's talking about. He is the unprofessional things that occurred. So her husband, John Kruger, at her behest, sets up a political action committee, a super PAC designation. Well, really wasn't designated correctly at first because John Kruger didn't know what he was doing. So John Kruger has no idea what he's doing. He sets up a super PAC. Well, eventually became a super PAC, but he sets up a political action committee. He sets it up in his own home. Now, why did he do that? Well, John Kruger, living in his ex-wife's ex-husband's home in Tequesta, Florida, where she already had at her house, because this is what she does. She's a full-time shiller. So somehow he files paperwork with the FEC to open up a political action committee. And at this point, you need somebody who actually understands politics. You need somebody who can actually fundraise. So, okay, I'll be the president. I'll do it unpaid, and I'll do it in my spare time. And you guys can do all the legwork on the paperwork because I'm not getting involved in that and all that. So that's the agreement. The agreement Vandersteel makes with her husband. Kruger would be the vice president, the COO, and he would file the paperwork because he knew how to do these things. Yeah, right. And Carrie Lockhart, of all people, admittedly, I think everybody knows Carrie Lockhart. If you know anything about Bill Mitchell, nobody else knows who Carrie Lockhart is. But Carrie Lockhart is a very mouse-like, inconsequential figure in this whole thing. But she was the one Ann designated to be treasurer. So I remember her calling me, being all upset. I don't know if I can be treasurer. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how. I said, listen, don't worry about it. John's taking care of all the paperwork. All you have to do is just review it and sign it, and I'll look at it first too to let you know what's up. So this was all done because Julio Gonzalez, Mr. Tax Preparer, again, no one knows who the hell these people are unless they watch Bill Mitchell. The MAGA Coalition came out of Bill Mitchell and Ann Vandersteel. This was never my idea. It was never my intention to do anything with it other than advise them on how to spend Julio's money. So Julio Gonzalez wants a super PAC. Why? Because he has he's working on the tax bill. And he has stuff that he wants in there as a corporate tax preparer that he's not getting through to Chairman Brady's office or Paul Ryan's office in the way that he wants. So he wants to, quote, and I have all this in writing from Ann Vandersteel too. If she wants to challenge any of it, we can just bring up all the Telegram we can screenshots. We can just talk about man if that's what you really want to do. So Julio Gonzalez, Mr. Tax Preparer, Tax Man, tells Ann that he is going to fund the super PAC that's going to go into Republican districts like Chairman Brady's and attack him for not supporting Trump-style tax reform. This is all, while the tax bill was being debated. My job was to help them formulate a message that would be conducive to getting anything done with how to run a super PAC, which keeps in mind, one thing QAnon is so stupid about, Dave Hayes is part of QAnon. He doesn't know any better. They're repeating old Brian Def Cage, creepy porn, paperboy stuff. Super PACs are not authorized to spend money to a campaign. Super PACs are not authorized to work directly with a candidate, not even the president himself. So when they say the money's not going to a candidate, no shit, you idiots. That would be illegal. So they don't know anything about how super PACs work. I was going to have to devise a message in order to get his tax goals to get people to call in Brady's district or Paul Ryan's district or some other district that wasn't that was on a Ways and Means committee. Long story short, that was my job of the whole thing. Big deal. I'll do it. Whatever. I said I'll do it. My spare time. I don't need any compensation for it. And says, well, John, my husband John is out of work, but he has a great job offer, and I forget what it was. It was like some trading firm or something wanted him. And I was like, oh, wow, he should definitely take that job. It sounded like a good job. Of course, it was probably not true at all, knowing Ann Vandersteel. And so my stuff keeps freezing lately. So just keep hitting hearts or something so I know that it's live. I appreciate that. Thank you. So anyway, John Kruger says to me, well, and I have this again in writing too. John Kruger says, hey, listen, I'm going to need some money. And I'm like, okay, like, what are we talking about here? And he's like, well, I need like 10 grand a month. And I'm like, well, you got to raise it. I'm not raising money for you to get paid. And I told him that. I said, listen, man, I'm sorry. I'm not gonna raise money just enough for you to take a salary out or something. I just can't do it. So keep in mind, at this point in time, I am an unwitting participant in this. I am almost unwillingly listed as president. Carrie Lockhart, who I didn't even really know, is the treasurer. And John Kruger, Ann Vandersteel's freaking alcoholic husband without a job, is the quote-unquote vice president COO, sets up the PAC incorrectly, sets up a nonprofit registered with the FEC with a personal bank account. I don't even know how the hell he did it. He went to Bank of America, and I don't know what they did, which is completely not appropriate. They opened up a personal account under his name and attributed it to a tax EIN number for a political action committee. So when Ann Vandersteel talks about things not being or unprofessional, yeah, it was her husband and her secretary, Carrie Lockhart. No, found out that they were putting donations that we were getting early on. By the time I found out it was going into a personal bank account of John Kruger, you can imagine I flipped the F out because my name is listed as a corporate officer. I flipped out. I didn't know what to do. I called up a lawyer that I knew through the campaign, who eventually represented us, who happened to be a tax lawyer, and he didn't know that much about the specifics of setting up the PAC. So he calls another lawyer for me, and long story short, the lawyers basically said, "You're sending a publicly registered PAC's money to a personal bank account to your vice president that you don't have access to." So, and I didn't have access to it, which is illegal. There was only one person on the account, and it was John Kruger. You have to have two people on the account. So John Kruger set up a coalition illegally with my name and my social security number, which I foolishly provided to them because I assumed that I was going to be on this bank account and that it was a real bank account meant for a corporate bank account for an entity registered with the FEC. So this is the real story. The real story. And Glenn goes into everything that happened after he was notified. But I'm telling you, for like one of the first times, how bad this shit was before Glenn got involved. Now, my choices at that time are twofold. One, get the hell out of Dodge. Get out. At this point, I want nothing to do with this. What I find out is not only is Julio I'll put 200 grand in. That was the original idea. He was going to put 200 grand in to start to see if we could get traction in any of these tax issues in these districts. Then they contact Sebastian Gorka, cut a deal with Sebastian Gorka for 20 grand a month. And there's more to the story, but I'm not going to say it because they know that if it goes there, they've got problems. So there's more to that story, but I'll gloss over that with the yada, yada, yada right now. Point is, they make a deal with Sebastian Gorka. It's $20,000 a month for a starter 3-month contract. And taxpayer Julio is going to pay it. This is all inside Bill Mitchell world. This was when Bill is trying to get Gorka on the show. I had never met Gorka. My only experience with Gorka at that point was my back channels in the White House that were just desperate to get rid of him because he was just, all they had to do was keep him away from the president constantly. He had no security clearance. He was absolutely hated by everybody. And Bannon kind of kept him around as like a I don't know, somebody to talk to. So the whole thing was weird. So I got heads up that Gorka was going to get forced out of the White House. A week before he gets forced out, I told Bill Mitchell before the show one night in pre-production, which consists of him putting makeup on weird spots on his face, terrible, awkward to watch. So I said, I heard your buddy Gorka's leaving. He's like, what? And I said, yeah, Gorka's leaving. He's leaving the White House. They can't get that clearance. It's impossible. And, McMaster hates him, and he's got to go. So then they get this idea that Gorka can be the chief strategist they had some other name for it. I told them, no, it would be like a chief strategist role. And they roll with it. Now here I am like 2 weeks into this thing. I'm the president of a inappropriately, if not like outright illegally set up PAC by John Kruger that's funneling PayPal donations into his personal Bank of America bank account that I don't even have access to. I can't even see what he's doing. So my lawyer gets involved and we shut everything down, stop everything cold. And at that point, he starts listing out what I can do. He said, listen, you've got to arrest the process now. You have no articles of incorporation, so there's no way to say what's been done with your consent or without your. You're kind of exposed at this point. You need to stop this whole process and reevaluate. So I'm like, all right, whatever. So meantime, I call a couple people. One of them is Glenn. I talked to Glenn. I said, listen, here's where we're at with this whole freaking thing. Ann's really got me in a tight spot. Julio pulled out the money, but there's another person who wants to donate money and more people that want to donate money now, but I can't take their money because it's going to go into a legal. it all comes down to Glenn says, okay, well, we're going to be in Miami in a couple days for the meetup. We will talk then. We'll talk with John Kruger. We'll talk with Ann. We'll talk with Bill Mitchell. Maybe Julio will show up. Of course, Julio never shows up. So this all goes down the night of the Miami meetup. And it's very awkward because I am not happy. They're trying to pull out. They don't know how to do it. They don't know what I'm up to. So Ann is very nervous. Bill's very nervous. This whole bizarre evening unfurls where they're hawking Brian Assine's rings for the MAGA Coalition. But Ann thinks that money's going into a bank account for her husband so her husband can get paid. So that night I tell Ann Vandersteel the truth. And here's the truth. Ann, if Julio doesn't provide any money, there's no money there. There's like maybe $12,000 raised so far, and I'm not paying people's hard-earned money to your husband for setting up the PAC wrong. So I'm sorry, but this is the deal. There's a whole bunch of things that are going to have to change, but I don't think we can pay John. And then I could just remember the look on her face, and then she's like, "Well, we went out of this then completely." And I'm like, okay. And I talked to John and Kruger. There's a couple of pictures of Kruger and I that somebody I think tweeted out. That's the conversation we had, was basically me telling John, I have other people willing to give money, but not for this whole idea that we originally set it up for, which is like getting involved in tax law, getting involved in pushing Chairman Brady or Paul Ryan in the district on something. And I said, so if Julio's out of this, I've got somebody else willing to step in, and they will uphold and agree to the Gorka contract that you guys extended. So he flips out because he's not going to get paid. Panicking because he doesn't know where the money's coming from anymore, and he knows I won't give it to him. He knows I can't put it into that. Telling him I've got to redo the whole PAC now to make it viable. And he's like, all right, then they just panicked, full-fledged panicked. He's like, well, I've already put quote-unquote travel and all this other stuff in. I'm like, just submit it. He's like, well, I want out. And I'm like, well, you haven't put together articles of incorporation yet. So I'd take your resignation, but there's no paperwork that any one of us are office holders. So, and then Carrie starts flipping out. She wants office treasurer. So here I am, essentially overnight. I am the soul of a super PAC that I didn't start and didn't want. That's how ridiculous this whole thing is. That's how big of a liar Ann Vandersteel is. She's sticking this shit all on me when I bailed her out. I bailed out her drunk husband, who I could have had probably prosecuted for the way he set up that political action committee. Clearly, I could have posited to the law enforcement people that there was fraud intended. He took my social security number. He opened up an account that did not allow me access, and may have attempted to expend funds without authorization of the board. So all of it was set up wrong. It was arrested. Everything was arrested, stopped in his tracks. And then my lawyer, and then I brought in Glenn, and then we had a professional banker in Chase Manhattan, where we worked with the IRS and the FEC, and we set it all up appropriately and moved over what the money. John Kruger tried to close the bank account down, but because it had an EIN number to his personal bank account, they couldn't shut down because it was attached to a corporate entity. So that's the part of the story that nobody else knows. I'll finish up this story a little bit later because I'm picking up the girls right now. But I wanted to make sure that you knew why Ann was so nervous on scope, because there's more to this story, and I'm going to give it to you. And I'm going to give it to you by tonight. So that's just a little clue in. And I'm coming for the truth. And everybody's going to hear it.